Okay, well, we'll start with the basics. Yeah. My name is Colleen Hanna, and I am 68 and a half years old. And we'll tell that to anyone because I don't ever see the point in hiding your age. So, yeah, I'm 68 and a half. And I was born in Ontario, and my father was in the OPP. And I mention that because I think that experience or that aspect of my childhood really shaped my life because when a parent is in an occupation or a career like that, you move constantly. And so I went to 9 schools in 12 years, or 13 years, I guess, beginning with kindergarten. And so 3 high schools and 6 elementary schools. And so that, well, I didn't appreciate it when I was young. I did appreciate it as I grew older, because it makes you really resilient and social, because everywhere you go you have to make new friends, and I think it gives you this ability to adapt to new places and new experiences. Yeah, so I appreciated that. Ultimately, I appreciated it. When I was a child, I hated it so bad because, all the attachments that you form, and then poof, when you're 8 years old, you're not going to maintain a relationship with someone far away like you can now. It'd be a totally different life now. But yeah, so I left my parents' home to go to theater school, and I went to Welland and went to Niagara College and studied theater arts. And then, of course, there was no work in theater. We worked a bit in Toronto. It's where I met my first husband and late husband, Paul. And we met with the then artistic director of Theatre New Brunswick, Walter Learning, in Toronto, and we were to be taken on as apprentices, but then the funding fell through. But then eventually, while we were working in Toronto at sort of lay people's jobs, not in theatre, Paul got a call from Theatre New Brunswick to come and stage manage. And then I followed him out to New Brunswick a couple of months later, and that's how we began our work, our sort of careers in theatre. And that's what brought us to Fredericton. It can also be a very kind of fickle place because when a theatre changes artistic direction, it's kind of like a new broom sweeps clean. And so when the artistic directorship changed, I wasn't working in theatre then because I had my second son, Keith. And so I ended up just, at home looking after the kids. And Paul got a job at the National Arts Centre in Ottawa, so we moved to Ottawa. And we were there for about 4 years. And then we came back to Fredericton. And I just felt the pull of this place. It was not the most consistent work because Paul started freelancing, and so he was also away a lot because that's the life of someone who's directing and acting or doing stage management. You have to go where the work takes you, but you don't necessarily take your family with you because that's cumbersome if you're just going somewhere for a month or 2 months. And so eventually, I got full-time work with the city of Fredericton, and so we were in that situation of him working away and touring, or sometimes working for Theatre New Brunswick, and I was working with the city. Very, very unexpectedly, Paul had a heart attack and died when he was only 37 years old, and the boys were 7 and 13, and that was obviously devastating for us. But we stayed, we had our friends, and we had our community, and that doesn't go away, you know. I feel teary. But yeah, I'm very glad we stayed. It was well, it is an amazing place, as I said, to raise children. And yeah, we raised a couple of great kids who are all grown up, big adult people now. I always felt like that single mom kind of classification or whatever. I don't know. I felt stigmatized by that. So I'd always correct people, and I'd say, no, I'm solo parenting. Like that really made a difference, right? Yeah, but I never contemplated leaving here. Well, you know, they were in school, and there were the 2 universities, and I thought, well, I've got a good shot at having my kids here to go through university, and that certainly came true. Both went to UNB, and yeah, it's been an amazing place to live. Yeah, but yeah, and it's a place that, well, it just looks after everyone. I love that. Yeah. Oh, and I'm sure that there are, like, you know, tens of thousands of other communities where the same thing happens, because we live in such a great country, you know. My oldest son went to Toronto, which is kind of cool because that's where I was born, and so when he was going, I felt good about that because it's an amazing city, and I was happy that he was going to experience that, like, you know, begin his career there. And then, you know, he was married and to a beautiful woman, Pam, and they had 2 sons, and then they moved to Calgary. And then my youngest son and his wonderful partner, Melissa, they moved to Calgary. So that started my shunting out to Calgary, go WestJet. And that was pretty exciting, actually, because I got to explore another place in such a, you know, that it immediately felt familiar because they were there. But they didn't really, I don't know, they just felt that pull to come back. So they both came back east, which was wonderful for us. And so our nest, I think, was empty for like maybe like 2 years. And then it was filled with kids and grandkids again. So that was, yeah, quite a blessing, for sure. We feel we're a very small family. So it just felt good for them to come home, and we spend a lot of time together. It's great. Yeah. And now my youngest son is living in PEI and went to culinary school there and really enjoys that, enjoys being east. So, and we get to see each other often enough. Oh. So, yeah, and I retired early from the city. Um, I worked there for 26 years, and I just felt like I wanted to do some other things and work-wise, and wasn't really. I mean, obviously, you're always concerned about finances and whatnot, but there were other things that I wanted to do that it just took me out on a bit of a limb, but I don't regret it. I worked the first year part-time for the Boys and Girls Club, which was very cool. I'm still on their board. I just love it. And then I went back and actually did a contract for the city for 2 years when it was the cultural capital of Canada, and in a different division, and that was really interesting. I got to work with some people at the city that I had never worked with before, and it was really exciting. Yeah. And in some ways I felt like I retired before I was 60, but I had also been working since I was 16, so I thought, yeah, that's good. I'm good with that, But I don't know. I'd probably even go back to work now, but I'm so busy with family and a bit of volunteer work. Not a lot, I must say, but...
How important is volunteer work?
Oh, I've been a volunteer since I was 15. I started out as a candy striper. That's probably probably only people my age would remember that. And it was a very small hospital because we lived in a lot of small towns when I was growing up. So it was, I don't know, maybe 100 beds. It was kind of a bit of a regional hospital, and it was fun. Yeah, I liked it. My mother was a cook there, so I had that little connection with her. And yeah, and that's where I started being a volunteer, and I've always been a volunteer. Done some really amazing things, met amazing people, and I really loved volunteering on a team. That was a lot of fun. I captained the dragon boat race, and I was team captain for when we were doing the Labatt Light Relay. And we entered a senior team in that. And oh my gosh, that was totally worth the price of admission to be with those people for 24 hours and watch them. I mean, let's be honest, there were a lot of drunk people at the Labatt Light Relay, except our team. Yeah. And it was just amazing to watch the women, it was all women, to watch them when these young men and women would come and visit our site and spend time with the women on our team. It was just priceless. It was like visiting their moms or their Grammys or something. But they were very drunk, and so some of the conversations were quite hilarious. At 3 o'clock in the morning, and they were, out on the track and doing their shift, and it was really quite. You can't duplicate that in the workplace. It has a kind of energy to it that is so unique. those kinds of volunteer experiences. Yeah. We borrowed someone's pop-up tent trailer, and a couple of men with really terrible hangovers came to help us take it down and push the framework through the canvas, destroyed the pop-up tent. And it was really unique. It was from Europe, and the people had ordered it, and I borrowed it, and I'll take such good care of it. And so I had to go to the canvas place, Advanced Canvas, I think it's called, and find out, get a quote to have the canvas replaced. Then the whole team, in the next 2 weeks, gathered all of their belongings that we could. We had a giant yard sale, and we had to raise the money. After raising all the money for the ballot light relay, we had to raise all the money. Now, they didn't have to do that, but they did it because they knew I was on the hook for it. Well, that was a real team effort, yeah. We raised, I think, like $593, and we paid for the canvas to have the trailer repaired, and then we just donated the rest of it to the Batlight Relay. That was great, yeah. I do love volunteer work. I really enjoy working for organizations who make such a difference in the community. They really keep everything ticking along, and I love volunteer work. But I can't think of any more examples. I did a lot of board work and some national volunteer work and some provincial, and it's all the same. It feels good, and yeah, you really feel like you've done something given from yourself, Yeah, I couldn't have done the work that I did as a recreation officer without volunteers. I mean, they were the backbone of everything, all of the programs that we were able to add and deliver came about because of volunteers. Like the Epsilon Golden Games is it's a blend of the senior population and the Epsilon Wise Men's Club out of the Y, and that was just a beautiful marriage. And I love the way that the people would just have an idea and they would think, surely we can get this done, and they would come and they would sit in a chair opposite my desk and they go, well, I want to start a bicycle club. How can we do that? And I said, oh, yeah, we could do that. Just because they were there, we could do it. It just, money's never really an object, and definitely manpower really never is, because there are always people willing to help and to make things happen. Gosh, I love that. I loved working with the older adults. That was incredible, because it just kind of it really reshaped so many of my impressions of life to build things. And by that I mean physical spaces and just communities of interest, to build something from the ground up, whether it was a swim club or a bicycle club or a physical center for older adults to go to do that with people who were in their 70s and 80s. That just blew my mind because there wasn't anything that you couldn't do because there was that incredible wealth of experience that individual adults have, and when you put them together as a group, like you could fill a room with people who knew how to do everything that was necessary to make something happen, and make it happen on a consistent basis, make it thrive and make it grow. So that was pretty impressive to me. When my children, well, one was gone and the other was still at home, and I married eventually after like a few years of kind of courtship, I guess you'd say. I married the second love of my life. So fortunate to have two. And his name is Bob, and he's just an amazing person, as many people would attest to. Yeah, he's much loved, and for good reason. And yeah, so as much as we could, we blended our two families, but they were mostly grown, so it was more like a blending of grandchildren. And they are incredible. I really can't say enough about how much energy they bring to your life. They take a lot away too, but they pay it back in spades just because they're so much fun to be with. Yeah. And, so they range in age from 2 to 20. So, and we've had fun with all of them. We still do, yeah. Only now our oldest, Malachi, he comes over to watch hockey and have meals, and it's very different, but in one way. Yeah. And we changed our living situation, some part of it by choice and some just by circumstances. We had to sell our house, and which was a great disappointment to the kids because it was right on the river, and we really enjoyed a lot of water activities that we have to work a little harder to get to those now. But we still have all our boats, all our kayaks and a canoe, and we get out on the water whenever we can. So that's not lost to us. And we are apartment dwellers, which I never thought we would be. I was sure that we would always have a house, but that didn't work out. We just kind of cried uncle. We were very tired after that year of selling the house and other things that happened, and so we cried uncle and decided we'd take an apartment for a year, and we just actually really love it. The kids aren't, especially the grandkids, they like the novel things about it, like they like being up high, I guess we're on the 4th floor, and they like the location, but it's like a cage to them, like, because they can't just walk outside, and they can't, their access, involves security, and the little ones still like the elevator, so that's good. But they need so much room, and if you bring them all together, it's like a bomb that's just about to go off. They're just these little balls of energy. And they can only bounce around so much in an apartment. So those family dinners have become very sort of chaotic, and but it is what it is.
Right.
If your health situation changes, for whatever reason, if you're in an apartment, it is so much easier to do the essential things of living. and to not have to do the snow shoveling and yard maintenance and all of that. I mean, I miss our yard tremendously. I miss drying my clothes outside, and I miss, yeah, I miss a lot about it. But it doesn't cause me to regret that move to an apartment. It's and we have our own little community there, as do most of the apartment buildings that I've heard about from friends. They have friends in the buildings and they help each other out, and it takes very little to create community in those kinds of surroundings. Aging in place is something that I think is easier in that kind of sort of containment. Yeah. Underground parking. Everyone should have underground parking in this climate. Like, we went from a driveway where you couldn't see over the banks on either side to just driving into a dry parking spot. There's no comparison. It's great. Yeah, especially if you have Bob had a couple of surgeries when we were in our house, and so I really had to do everything in terms of maintenance. And I was fortunate because we had 2 mild winters. Those 2 winters were great, so I didn't really have to shovel snow. And it was weird because it was like February. Both the surgeries were in the late winter, but the snow had just stopped, so I was smiled upon by someone. Yeah. Okay. Well, my husband had recently had quite a significant surgery, and that required him to travel back and forth to St. John. The follow-up treatment required him to travel back and forth to St. John to the regional hospital every day of the weekdays for 6 weeks. So 30 days, 30 treatments. And so the first help that I got was from a friend who had the experience and knew that he probably knew me well enough to know that I would think, well, I can do that. I can drive him 30 times to St. John in the winter. And but you're not really functioning at a very level place, because you're concerned about that person's health, and so you're not making the best decision. So he knew that about me, and he knew that the help would be there, and so he just sat me down. Well, 2 of Bob's friends sat me down and said, "You're going to need drivers, and you shouldn't be the person who gets them, and you shouldn't be the person who organizes them." And so I didn't really object, because I just thought, well, that makes sense. All those people out there with cars who love him so much, and if they want to help, well, that would be amazing. And so I knew immediately who I should ask to be the person to put that all together, and that was you. It was handy. And one of the people I talked to didn't know who you were, but the other person did, and they were like, "Yeah, that's the person you need to talk to." And so with very, very little effort on Bob's or my part, we knew all the people who had offered to help, and so we just put a list together and we gave it to Sandy, and she started that ball rolling, and we had more drivers than we could actually drive him, because I was doing a day a week, and I eventually had to give up some of my days because people were so insistent that they be able to help, and that was just amazing, really amazing. It made such a difference. What I would say to anyone who was in that kind of situation where you're kind of facing an impossible task, is to always reach out, because I think people are surprised by how large their community of sort of affection is. That, like we had people, for example, from our church. Not that surprised me, because the congregation at St. Paul's is incredible. I see them help people all the time, but that's just one aspect of a person's life. And then you have, people who you worked with, and obviously your friends and your family, and it seems like a monumental thing to do, but it just starts with one person. Like with me, it started with the person who said, do this because you need to, it'll be better for you and for your husband. And then the second person, which was Sandy, who put it all together and followed it through. And just reach out is what I would say. It's not that you'll be surprised, but you'll help people help you, because that's what they want. Yeah, and food was the other way that people helped us, and it's surprising. Like, I cook all the time, but it was still, when I see that like lasagna comes through the door, that big pot of soup, I'd be just like, yeah, that's awesome. Because like you just again, you're not in control of your life in that kind of situation. Suddenly the variables in your life completely change. It's like being turned upside down and shaken. Your whole life just, it's in a jumble, and it has to rearrange itself. And friends and people who care for you, if you reach out to them, they can be part of that, that restoring of equilibrium, so you can get on with what you need to do, which is to help that person be well again. And and I know we're only partway through the journey of wellness for him, but so far, people have made such a difference to the whole situation. So. I feel like I'm cheating a bit, because I just had a great conversation with my sons and their partners, and we talked about listening to yourself, that to thine own self be true, to know yourself and trust yourself, and that's where your best decisions come from. They really do. I mean, if you're fortunate, you have people who love you and you can go to for guidance, but how you know and care for yourself, your inner wisdom, and that you respect it and trust it and use it, is the most important thing that you can do for yourself and for your family. And yeah, my younger son, well, both my sons actually have made career decisions where that was the only thing that they were sure of. They were sure that they weren't happy and that they weren't going to get happy in a job, and they just went, okay, this isn't good enough. I can do better than this, and I may not get richer, or be able to save for retirement or whatever, but I'm going to feel good about myself and the people who I love and care for in my world, because I made the best decision that I knew how to make. So, yeah, it was a really, it was a very amazing conversation. The kind that you kind of long for all the time when you're with your kids. Well, I do. Yeah, and sometimes you just goof off. But today was a good day for that kind of conversation, and to hear those values that you hope you taught them, and to hear them come back in those grown-up people. Yeah, it's very very moving.